Welcome to Real Estate Investor Talk with Neil Peterson, where we interview property industry leaders, investors, entrepreneurs, and movers and shakers in the real estate industry. And today we interview a real estate investor, businesswoman, and author who believes that you can have it all and achieve financial freedom through student accommodation investments. She recently launched a book, which I suggest you all read. It is called How to Create Wealth with Student Accommodation in South Africa. Her name is Retha van Rooyen. Retha, welcome, and thank you once again for your valuable time.
Thank you, Neil. It's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to our chat.
Absolutely. So, Retha, I always say start at the beginning. Where did your journey in properties start?
So I was your typical, 9-to-5 employee. I worked for a corporate company for 21 years, and I found a Rich Dad Poor Dad training course that I attended, and from there I just started to try a few things. And then in 2020, that was originally from 2017, and then in 2020, that's when I found student accommodation, and that then became the only thing I could think about and dream about. And so this is what I wanted to do. And ever since then, that's really what I have been focusing on.
Okay, wonderful. And also glad to hear that Robert Kiyosaki's also inspired you. He's also coming again to South Africa next month, in fact, Cape Town and Johannesburg. So also to our audience, if they want to go, they must attend, because really he is definitely a good innovator in property, and also not only inspire. I think it's more than that. It's real good information that you can learn. So now let's get into the student accommodation sector, because why is it such a good category to invest in? Because I think let's talk about that first, and then we can go into some of the sort of more deeper stuff later.
So student accommodation is definitely, it comes from a few points of view. So the first one for me is really around in property, it is the one that has given me the best returns. It does come with other terms and conditions, there's a lot more work required and so on, but it definitely has the best returns that I have experienced in property. And then from the other point of view, it's really you helping someone, a student that comes from potentially a really disadvantaged background. You're helping them, and we are shaping the future leaders of South Africa. So that is definitely the other angle that I'm very passionate about. But then the money must also be good. So the two of those goes hand in hand, and that's sort of where the magic happens.
Okay, well, I mean, we've seen that obviously, demand certainly exceeds supply. If we look at, accommodation, I mean, we look at the universities, the colleges, and all the other tertiary institutions. So there's definitely demand, but it comes with a lot of challenges, property management and that kind of stuff. So maybe do you just want to tell us some of the challenges that you are currently experiencing, because a lot of people tend to focus on that side first.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go into student accommodation really with some rosy glasses on, and they think, oh, the money is so great, and they don't want to spend anything as well. And to make those returns, you still have to invest back into your property, into the management of it. Because if you're just going to leave it alone for students to run the property for you, you're going to be very, very disappointed at the end of that year. So some of the challenges is really around, you need to have someone on site, someone that can supervise, interact, guide students, or you might very easily end up with some very angry neighbors, and then the neighbors will keep you busy and up at night. So that is the first thing. The second thing is around your property maintenance. There's a lot of things that you would typically charge a normal tenant, when for maintenance related items like paint, that sort of thing. Whereas in student accommodation, there's a lot of items that landlords must do and replace. And to get that, if you want to charge students for certain things, you're really gonna struggle, and you're gonna have a mass mutiny on your hands. So you really have to be very specific with them upfront about what is it that you're gonna charge from them on your maintenance, and then you have to do annual maintenance. And I think that then goes hand in hand with, to be a student accommodation landlord, you have to be a good cash flow planner. Okay, you can't be someone that just spends your money every single month. You have to be disciplined in taking the money that you're getting, because you don't get money for 12 months in a year. You only get it for 10. So you need, you get 10 months worth of money, but you get it, you actually only get paid for 5 or 6 months of the year. The rest of the time you're waiting for the money to come. So it's really about making sure that when that big monies come in, that you put it away immediately, and you have 5 to 6 months of coverage on your expenses in your account, in a savings account that you cannot touch. And only after that do you start enjoying the benefits of your investment. And that is very, very important. I've seen so many people go out of student accommodation precisely because of that. And, they come to January, February, March, we're still waiting for money. April, we're still waiting for money as I'm sitting here right now. So you have to make sure that you're covered from December until April, which is a long period of time without income and still very high expenses. So that is very, very important, I would say.
Okay, so one of the biggest complaints I always hear from student accommodation operators is the challenges that they have in collecting funds from NSFAS, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. And because there's huge delays, and we're talking about people that are pretty much been in the game a long time, so they are experiencing very similar ones, which a lot of people will look on the outside and say no. And I think you've given good advice. So, I mean, how can we overcome that? Because obviously there's a recent announcement, there's all kind of corruption that's going on at NSFAS. How do you deal with it? How do you overcome that?
I think this year has been exceptionally challenging for everybody. Every single year we did it since 2020. It has been different. It's almost like you're starting over, learning the processes over again every single year. And this year we said, well, listen, we don't know what's happening at NSFAS. I don't know if anybody really knows still today what's really happening there. So, but we can see the wheels are turning. We can see it's busy going to, no matter how many people they fired, no matter how many people left, the wheels are still turning. And that pilot system where NSFAS wants to pay landlords directly, it's happening. It's still being rolled out. It's not stopping. So we could see that is there, and whether we decided from our side whether it's going to happen, whether it's not going to happen, we're going to have our own processes as well, which was aligned to the old way of working last year. So it's almost like you're doing that duplicate work, but at least you're a little bit more covered in terms of making sure that you will receive your money eventually. And I think in the pilot system that NSFAS is going through, they have a wonderful idea that they want to pay landlords directly, and it's really going to help so many students, especially the TVET college students, to find good quality accommodation. But in the meantime, obviously it's a new system, a new way of working. There's teething problems. The process was supposed to have been rolled out in a certain way, but then they should have started in November already with that process. And now we're in February, everybody's moving in. So they had to find different ways of working just to get everybody onboarded onto that system. And obviously that is now catching everybody a little bit off guard. And we have been promised some money in April. I received one payment. I don't know who it was for because it doesn't say, it just says NSFAS.
Wow. So, well, hopefully it's on the right source.
Apparently there's a module that's going to go live soon, which will tell you whose payment you received. Yeah, but it is happening. We can, we can see these people behind the scenes working on this. So I'm hoping, crossing fingers, that April, before the end of April, first week in May, we will see some good monies coming through.
Wonderful. That's fantastic. Okay, so and that's like music to the ears of any investor because as you mentioned right at the outset, it's all about that cash flow. So let's just go a little bit deeper into what you do because you also assist a lot of investors and owners who are sitting with the pains of collection and also property management, actually managing their own student accommodation. So you not only own your own student accommodation buildings and houses, you actually also manage on behalf of other operators who are not prepared to do that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think the whole dream about passive income I was sold to me in the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad training that I did. And when I went into student accommodation, I was like, okay, no, this is not passive. So I decided, well, let me see. So we first started to manage for myself. Then we went to our direct investors, and now we rolled it out to more external people that we also assist. And the reason for that is because, a property investor, you really want to be as passive as possible. Okay. So we decided we want to do the process from the beginning all the way through to the end. So all the way from people saying, listen, I need extra cash. So it could be that simple entry level, someone just looking for a small property or a bigger building if they're struggling with management. But for the smaller guys, we'll find you a property that complies, that we know can get accreditation, and we'll introduce you to people that can fund it, banks, whatever else, and then we'll help with the conversion as well. So we'll make sure that however you're going to convert that property, furniture that you need to get will be compliant so that you can get the best grading that there is, so that you can get an A grade, a gold, whatever they want to call it. We make sure that you comply with regulations, with NSFAS's requirements, so that you can get that base grading, because that obviously ties directly into the amount of money that you're going to get. So that is the first step. So we help with accreditation, with the conversion, with the accreditation process. We work with the universities, with NSFAS, whoever else. We'll do all the portal loading and the registrations and everything that needs to be done. And then, of course, we market to students, we place the students. Once they're there, we make sure that there's disciplinary processes implemented. We like to do community service instead of fines, which is fantastic. Sorry, side story. The other day, we had a VRCIV Improvement District Initiative.
Yeah.
I can't remember the acronyms, but
community.
We had a whole visibility exercise that we did with them. So a whole lot of students went and they did marches through the neighborhood, and because we want to be seen as a contributing to safety, not creating safety issues. So we want to help. We don't want to create issues. Anyway, so we do the community service for discipline and management. We do facilities as well to make sure that throughout the year, your property is maintained. You don't get to the end of the year and there's hundreds of thousands of rands that you need to spend on it. And then, of course, the best, but the last, but the best process is to obviously get your money in. A most important process. And we'll deal with NSFAS, university, whoever else. So it's literally end to end as far as you want it to be.
Okay, that's wonderful because sometimes there's some owners that do not want to do property management. They don't like doing it. It just becomes a drag. So that's a great, I think, offering that you put out there. Now, you've also told me that one of the big problems you've had for, with students, some are unable to register, they can't get accommodation. And then there's also those that think they've got accommodation and they don't have accommodation. In other words, they got scammed. Tell us what's going on there and how can students prevent that from happening?
I think there's such a a huge demand, and the problem is that students get university acceptance in provinces that's very far away from them, from where they live, and they don't know the area, they don't know anybody in that area. And then at some point, it's like, flip, I don't have any accommodation yet. So they're desperately looking on social media, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, wherever they're looking for accommodation. And then what you'll find is that because they can't travel to go and view the place, they don't have anybody to send to go and view the place for them. They end, and all the properties that's listed on legit sites, that's proper sites, are full. Then they get very desperate, and they'll just try and contact anybody on Facebook. And those guys are, well, you can come and view, but you need to pay a deposit first. And then they'll pay a deposit, and eventually when they show up at the property doesn't exist. And I've had people where that happened, and students were standing in the streets and looking at, where there's no house, it's just a field. And luckily the neighbors felt sorry for them, and they said lots of students got scammed like that. And they had my number, they called me, and I was then able to assist. We also had one student that came in, and she's like, oh, I've booked with you. And I look at, the picture looks like our picture. But then when I went into the details, they used all of our company details, and the poor student paid money to them. And then they didn't realize that they weren't using an official company email address. It was just like some random Gmail. And then as soon as they paid the money, that person was uncontactable, And this is all from, those ones were all from Facebook scams specifically. So the group has 50,000 people in it, but there's so many scammers on there. You have to be so careful. You cannot go and stay in a property or pay for anything if you haven't viewed it. That is the most important thing. And if you really, really can't, then it's important to make sure that you communicate with an actual company. Don't just deal with an individual in that case, Make sure it has like a company email address, and then research the company, research the people that's on Facebook, check that they have a legit profile that's older than 2 weeks old, that, they've got friends, communication, whatever happening on their profiles. So, and it's not just, oh, call Tsepo at this number. Those are usually a very good giveaway that there's a scam happening there. Yeah.
So let's get back on the sort of investment side of things, because the opportunity for income is what, 10 months, 11 months? And
10 months, yeah.
10 months, yeah. So you got 2 months, but you actually capitalizing on those 2 months. Tell us a little bit about that. What you're doing in those sort of 2 months, that 2-month period, let's call it the dry months, where there is no cash flow coming in through the normal student channels, and how you're monetizing there.
Yeah. So in all our properties, we listed on Airbnb. So it's a student property. Okay, you can't make it into a fancy 5-star Airbnb listing. So in those cases, we just make very sure that our prices are very good, and we make sure that it says budget accommodation, and it's very clear in terms of what you don't provide. We don't provide towels. That's a very expensive thing to do. We do provide some basic bedding, but I'm not basic kitchen utensils. I don't have anything fancy there. Just the things for you to be able to do your self-catering, pots, pans, that sort of thing. And obviously, it's not going to work for every single property. So it's almost like a little bit of a trial and error the first time you do it. Some properties work absolutely amazing, whereas other ones, if there's no parking available, on site, and you do get that a lot in Cape Town, people don't like that. They want their cars to be safe. So those properties don't do well. But then other ones where there is off-street parking, they do extremely well for big groups. I already have some of my houses already got booked out this past week for December. Oh, wow. Yeah, so you know, obviously, guys, my Potch properties, they don't get booked. Okay, so maybe don't try those. But Cape Town, anything on the coast, I would think, you know, holiday towns, those ones should do fairly well. It's usually fully booked between like for like 15 days over Christmas New Year period. Um, and sometimes we also get companies that'll book their employees that they want to stay together and have something cheaper. They will book their employees in there for like a whole month in January or something like that. So we do get cases like that as well.
No, that's wonderful.
Construction workers, civil workers, those sort of guys.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity to supplement that missing income
Hmm.
that you have. A great idea, and I think a lot of people will learn from that. So thanks for that insight. Okay, so lastly, I think, Rita, maybe just tell the audience, for somebody's, been listening here, because you also run student accommodation courses, you've written a book, so you essentially are a coach, trainer of people wanting to get in property. You're doing it. And we will make some announcements of your course in Cape Town and Johannesburg. I know last year we did a wonderful bus trip, and I think we must definitely look at doing that again. And for those that are really serious, even operators of existing student accommodation, really can learn a lot from that. So maybe just your words to somebody that's listening in here, and they're saying, I'd like to get into student accommodation. How do I start? How do we go about it?
I think the quickest and easiest way to just two things. Make sure that that property is close to where you stay. You want to, especially if it's your first one, you want to be more involved. Even if you have a good person running it for you, you want to understand what's happening there. You know, so do something that's a little bit closer to where you are physically, and make sure that it's within, let's do maximum 3 kilometers from a university or TVET college. If you do that, you're gonna, with a little bit of advertising, you should be able to fill up your property fairly easily. And then, of course, make sure that the property is on the guidelines, the national regulations. And then the third thing is, like I said, yeah, make sure it's closer to where you are, that if there's a crisis, if something happens, you can be there and assist, because it's going to need some kind of input from you at some point in time.
Rita van
Yeah, but
Rooyen,
if you use the student accommodation, you've done one or two, then it's much easier to kind of go a little bit further to where it's easier, universities, more demand, then you can start looking at lots of more complicated things like that.
well, we're going to hopefully have an opportunity soon to announce some dates for courses. We just need to knuckle down. I think just before year end, around September, October is a good time, because for the following year, to get people to sort of, or even before that, so they can start getting their properties if they don't have it, or if you want to get managed, or hand over your management of your properties to Retha, then that's sort of that year end period is the right period of doing it. Rita, thank you very much for your time. It was wonderful chatting to
Pleasure.
you. And once again, I'm just going to encourage everybody to get the book, How to Create Wealth with Student Accommodation in South Africa. I encourage you get that book. We'll put up a link on this particular interview. And it's always great chatting to you, as always. Rita van Rooyen of My Student House. Wonderful chatting to you. It's Neil Peterson of REI. Thank you.
Thanks.